Hello, everybody. Gino Barbaro here, co-founder of Jake and Gino, best-selling author, Wheel of Our Profits. I've got two great guys on the call here with me today. Dylan Marma, he's head of investor relations at Rand Partners, and I have Boomer Philbrick, who's going to be talking about cost segregation today. We need to bring Boomer on because it's a really complex subject. We love cost segregation. It's an amazing benefit to investors, and the reason why we want to bring Boomer on is you need to get in touch with someone like Boomer as you're looking at deals, as you're putting in letter of intent on properties. It's important that you get in front of this cost segregation. So without further ado, Boomer, thanks for joining us, and let's just dive right into cost segregation, what it is, and how it benefits us investors.
All right, so I appreciate you guys giving me the time. Right now, your building and everything inside of it is depreciated as one single line item over 27 and a half years. Now, what an engineered cost segregation study does is break your building down into 50 or 60 different components and place those different components into their correct shorter class lives. So let's say you own an apartment complex and you replace all of the carpeting and flooring in all of your units. Your CPA is most likely going to place that into 5-year class life, which is the length of time that the IRS puts on items such as flooring. But when you bought your building, most likely all of your units of property, your carpeting, your flooring, your lighting, your plumbing, and your security were all grouped together with the building and placed into 27 and a half year. So if you want to call it reverse engineering, what we do is we separate all of those parts and get them into their proper class lives so that you can depreciate them over the length of time that the IRS says. And by doing this, you are reducing your taxable income, which reduces your tax liability and ultimately increases your cash flow.
Why don't we jump into some studies? Let's talk about the studies, how it works for investors. And you want to jump to the next slide, Dylan?
Yeah, I'll jump into the next slide. One last piece on this. So something that's really exciting here, working as head of the investor relations here with Rand Partners, something that I know a lot of our investors have really enjoyed are the tax benefits that come through doing the cost segregation study. In fact, when you're an investor in a syndication or in a tenant in common, the way that this impacts you is exactly the same. When you invest into the deal, you receive your pro rata share of the accelerated depreciation, or as we'll talk about shortly, the bonus depreciation, and we're going to dive into exactly how it's going to impact you as an investor.
All right, okay. So right here we have an apartment complex that was roughly $14 million. You cannot depreciate land. So after taking out land, we came up with a building cost of $11.7 million. Now, all of that $11.7 million is currently being depreciated over 27 and a half years. However, there are certain components of your property that have shorter class lives according to the IRS, but those have to be broken out by an engineering company for you to reap the benefit. So as you can see on the left-hand side here, we were able to accelerate 13% of the property into 5-year, 5% into 15-year, and the remaining 82% stayed in 27 and a half year. Now you're asking, what are some of the components of the building that are eligible for accelerated depreciation? On this property, you were looking at the carpeting, the wood flooring, the molding, the cabinets, the security system, the wall coverings, the window treatments. All that stuff is eligible to go into 5-year property. In the 15-year property, you're looking at the parking lot, the striping on the parking lot, the landscaping, the sidewalks and curbs, any kind of signage that you have. All that stuff can be pulled forward into 15-year property, which is going to help you create additional depreciation. So on this study here, we were able to create an additional $2.1 million of depreciation, which you can see in the second column from the right, the timing difference. And that additional depreciation for the investor at a 37% tax rate is going to reap an additional $776,000 of cash savings in tax year 2018. Now, some of you are going, well, I don't really need almost $800,000 of depreciation for 2018. You don't lose it. You simply can carry it forward to the next year. So you're able to reap all the benefit of doing a cost seg study.
So Boomer, I get a lot of questions from students saying, what is the minimum size deal that we're actually start considering doing a cost segregation study?
That's a great question, Gino. In the past, 5 or 10 years ago, any property that had a value of under $5 million, it really didn't make sense to do because of the cost of the study. But with the advancements in technology and a lot of sweat equity, right now we can normally create a pretty compelling ROI on properties as low as $300,000.
Wow, that is awesome. That is really that is I don't know what to say. That is fantastic because we've got a lot of students that are on the fence, and if you can pull one of these deals through, that's great. And another question I had, I mean, basic students are always asking for rules of thumb. I see the percentage for 5 and 15 years. What is actually the rule of thumb? You know that you can get an average property get that accelerated depreciation. Is there a certain rule of thumb you guys look for? I know every property is different. There's different components in the property, but is there something that the general rule of thumb?
Yeah, the general rule of thumb you're looking at is probably about 20 to 25% of your property is going to be eligible for shorter class lives and accelerated depreciation.
And can you describe or discuss what bonus depreciation is?
Yes. So a lot of you that have heard of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act and the Trump plan, and you talk with your CPA about it, you probably didn't reap much benefit from it. But this is huge for commercial building owners. What it is you're eligible to reap the 100% bonus depreciation all in the current tax year. So as you see on this study here, they were able to accelerate 2.1 million of depreciation in 2018. Before the Trump plan, you'd reap the savings over the first 5 or 6 years under the current structure. So the new Tax Cuts and Jobs Act is huge with enormous tax benefits for building owners.
And Boomer, a last question that I have is when should people get in touch with you looking at a deal and considering cost segregation?
So obviously, the earlier in the deal that you get in touch with us, the more benefits you're going to reap. If you currently own properties, we can go back and pull forward all the depreciation that you left on the table. But anyone that is considering buying a property and has an LOI on it, go ahead and reach out. We do a no-cost analysis on very low pressure. Every building owner's tax situation is different. That's why we like to look at each situation on an individual basis and figure out what the benefit is for you.
And guys, I want to chime in on that because when we're looking at a new acquisition, we are always very thoughtful about what the tax advantages are going to be for the investors. So when you look at remember Boomer mentioned that this is a $14 million building, but in this case, they valued it at 11.7 after you subtracted the value of the land from the building. Oftentimes, as you're going to close on the property, you can actually have some say in what the value of the land is versus what the value of the building is. And the larger the value of the building, the more tax advantages you're going to be able to receive because you're going to have a greater amount to depreciate over the various depreciation schedules. So make sure as you're going into closing, you reach out to Boomer and you make sure that he walks you through what the best way for you to close on the property is to make sure you're maximizing your tax advantages. Of course, it has to be within the realm of reality to put the value on the land. You can't make the land valued at $1, but you do have some say in being able to make sure that the land is valued at the least amount possible to make sure you're maximizing your tax benefits.
I like that. How do people get a hold of you, Boomer?
You can reach me via email, which is just my first and last name, boomerphilbrick@gmail.com, or you can pick up the phone and give me a call. My number is 812-639-0656.
Guys, thanks for being on the call. Another benefit to multifamily, get your game on. I want you to call Boomer as you get that LOI and go through the various scenarios because we all have our own tax scenarios going on. So it's really important that you get ahead of it. Be proactive, like Dylan said. Take control of what the land cost can be. Once you take control of that, you can take control of your future. Guys, once again, thanks for being on the call. We'll see you soon.